The Senate will come to order. Senator Zenzinger, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Madam President. If you'll please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Majors, please take the roll.
Aguilar, Balmer, Baumgartner, Brophy, Cadman, Crowder, Grantham, Guzman, Harvey, Heath, Herpin, Hill, Hodge, John, Johnston, Jones, Kafalis, Kerr, King, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Newell, Nicholson, Renfro, Rivera, Roberts, Scheffel, Schwartz, Stedman, Tocktrop, Todd, Ulibarri, Zenzinger. Madam President.
Here. With 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Senate has a quorum. Motion to adopt the journal. Senator Marble.
Thank you and good morning, Madam President. I move the reading of the journal dated Thursday, March 27th be dispensed with as approved and corrected by our most absolutely wonderful and appreciated secretary.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. That motion is adopted. Senate Services.
March 28, 2014, correctly printed, Senate Bills 170 and 171, Senate Joint Resolutions 23 and 24. Correctly engrossed, Senate Bills 115, 158, 161, Senate Joint Resolution 21. Correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 156. Correctly revised, House Bills 1100, 1149. Correctly re-revised, House Bills 1186 and 1277.
Introduction of resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 1014 by Representative Sonnenberg and Senator Brophy concerning the designation of March 26, 2014 as Agriculture Day in Colorado.
Mr. Majority Leader.
We ready for the joint memorial?
The motion is to lay it over until April 8th.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we lay over House Joint Resolution 1014 until April 8th.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. House Joint Resolution 1014 will lay over until April 8th. Mr. Majority Leader.
I know.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we proceed out of order for the purpose of considering Senate Joint Memorial 2.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We'll proceed out of order to consider Senate Joint Memorial 2. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Joint Memorial 2?
Senate Joint Memorial 2 by Senator Toctrop and Representative Lebsog concerning memorializing former Senator Eldon W. Cooper.
Senator Toctrop.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Senate Joint Memorial 2 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Majors, please read Senate Joint Memorial 2 at length.
Whereas our respected former colleague, Senator Eldon W. Cooper, departed this life on April 16, 2013, at the age of 86. And whereas he was born on February 20th, 1927, on his father's homestead at Kendrick, Colorado, before severe drought led his family to pack up its wagons and livestock and head north to Merino, Colorado in 1932. And whereas Senator Cooper was a veteran of World War II, having been inducted into the Army at Fort Logan, Colorado, and serving in the Philippines, where he also lost a dear brother. And whereas for his actions in the war, Senator Cooper received the Asian Pacific Theater Ribbon, the Victory Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal, and quickly rose from the rank of private to that of technician 4th grade, just below sergeant. And whereas he married the love of his life, Mary Jo Scheidegger, in Fort Collins in 1947, and they remained together for 62 years until her passing in 2009. And whereas Senator Cooper was appointed by a vacancy committee in 1968 to represent House District 4 in Adams County, and continued to serve in the House as the representative for House District 30 in Denver until 1974. And whereas Senator Cooper was then elected to the Colorado Senate, serving Senate District 18 until 1978. And whereas, as a member of the General Assembly, Senator Cooper served on the Game, Fish, and Parks, Health, Welfare, and Institutions, Labor and Employment Relations, Appropriations, Business Affairs and Labor, Education, Wildlife Parks, Natural Resources and Energy, and Agriculture, Natural Resources and Energy Committees, as well as serving on the Joint Budget Committee. And whereas Senator Cooper was the working man's friend, promoting worker safety and collective bargaining rights as a leader in the Denver Area Labor Federation, as an international representative for United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Workers, and as president of the Colorado AFL-CIO. And whereas one of Senator Cooper's proudest legislative achievements was the creation of the Senior Citizens Lifetime Fishing License. Senator Cooper's father, Samuel Cooper, was issued the first license of its kind. And whereas after leaving the General Assembly, in addition to continuing his fight for workers' rights, Senator Cooper served on the Colorado Division of Wildlife and was appointed by President Jimmy Carter as Assistant Director of the Department of Labor, Western Region. And whereas Senator Cooper and his wife, Mary Jo, left behind a grand living legacy as the proud parents of 5 children and an extended family that includes 15 grandchildren, 30 great-grandchildren, and 5 great-great-grandchildren. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that in the death of Senator Eldon W. Cooper, the people of the State of Colorado have lost a dedicated public servant and outstanding citizen, and that we, the members of the General Assembly, do hereby extend our deep and heartfelt sympathy to the members of his family and pay tribute to someone who served his state well and faithfully. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint memorial be sent to Senator Cooper's children, Judy and Sonny Sharon of Tecumseh, Oklahoma, Sam and Debbie Cooper of Dacono, Colorado, Doug and Diane Cooper of Brighton, Colorado, Vicki and Ernie Rodriguez of Morrison, Colorado, and Jerry and Randy Mitchell of Lakewood, Colorado.
Thank you. Senator Toctrop.
Thank you, Madam President. I had the privilege of meeting Senator Eldon Cooper one time in Adams County, was several years ago, and I think he was retired. But after reading, finding of his demise and knowing that I would be presenting a memorial, I read up on him, and I will tell you that Senator Cooper was a true Colorado son, born in the Eastern Plains during the Dust Bowl. And we've talked about that down here many different times. And because of the Dust Bowl, his family moved up to I guess, northern Colorado, still on the plains. And one of the things that, when I read about Senator Cooper, was he said one of the best things that he can remember of his childhood was when they traveled, when they moved, because they moved by wagon, and it took him 3 days, and he got to sleep every night under the stars. And to him, that was an adventure. Of course, you know, to the family, this was pretty tragic to have to move from one homestead to the other. Eldon Cooper was a true friend of the working families. Worked very hard to make sure that working families, in particular, that they fair wages and collective bargaining. After he was served his terms in the Senate, he did continue that work, working with the AFL-CIO, and also in, as you heard, in Jimmy Carter's labor movement. The other thing that Senator Cooper did that I enjoy, not like he did, but enjoyed very much. He was a cowboy. He family told me that he roped. He did team roping until he was 76 years old, which is quite a feat at that age, even to get on a horse. I can tell you that. But one of the things that he did was in his Senate, and I'll read it. Eldon was a tough, hard-driving legislator. And this is from Morgan Smith. He said, I remember him taking on Ted Strickland over Ted's anti-rodeo bill. And that was a huge boost for Dick Lamb's campaign for governor against Ted in 1978. I can't imagine anybody in Colorado, given our legacy, and I'm talking about the former, one of the former senators, introducing any kind of legislation that would be anti-rodeo. But thanks to Senator Cooper, we still have that sport, which is part of our Western heritage. I find it rather interesting that I have the privilege of presenting this memorial because I represent the area in Adams County that he represented when he served. But ironically, I sit at the same desk that Senator Cooper sat at. Family that doesn't know, it's one in the next to Senator Kerr with all the flags. And I am very pro-labor. I think everybody knows that. I also ride horses, don't do rodeo. Did a little bit way back. And previously I was the chair of the Sportsman's Caucus, so it kind of fits in that this is not about me, but I'm following some of the heritage that Senator Cooper brought forward. Again, it is my pleasure, and I want to give my heartfelt sympathy to the family. And again, I will say that Senator Cooper was a giant of a man. You very proud that I have the privilege of presenting this memorial to the family, and you can be very proud of your son, of your father, who gave a legacy and left a legacy here for the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. When I previously served down here, Senator Eldon Cooper was the AFL-CIO president. He was a no-nonsense guy. You know, what you heard is what you saw is what you got. What you heard is what you got. And he was adamant about his cause. There was no doubt where he stood on labor issues. But interestingly, he was also a cowboy. And you can see from the photo over here and get a sense of that. And he was, he's a modern Democrat looking out after working people. And he didn't give an inch on that. Interesting story. You may not even, this is ancient history because there wasn't interstate banking at the time I served before. And there was a big struggle between the bankers and independent bankers about bringing in out-of-state banks. And I had a problem with that. That's when I was assistant minority leader. And Ruth Wright, who was the minority leader, had a problem with that. And Speaker Bev Bledsoe had a problem with that. Interestingly, that's how things work down here. You never know, right? So one day there was a bill to allow interstate banking, and there was an amendment offered that was bad for labor. And I was representing Adams County, and I represented working people because it was important for them to get ahead and to have a family and to feed their family and have a future. And but in this bill, we decided, Ruth Wright and I did at the last minute, along with the Speaker, unsaid, just watching the vote board in the House, to put an amendment on there that was bad for labor, because we knew it would pull Democrats off the bill the next day and kill the bill on third reading. And that's precisely what happened. But my trepidation was Eldon Cooper, because I knew he was right on the other side of the glass. And I looked up, and there he was watching, and he knew exactly what was going on. And we put that on, and I remember, I thought, well, I better go out and face it now, right? Get it over with. And I walked in the lobby, and man, I've never seen that guy so mad, because I had done something that hurt working people. And I said, Eldon, this is going to not pass. Don't worry. This is to stop interstate banking in Colorado, which we did for about 4 years. It eventually came. And but that's not the way he thought about it. He was ticked. And that was Eldon. He was a straight-on guy. You knew what you got with Eldon Cooper. And I got to say, he, we all come down here to do our service, and he certainly did that in all sorts of capacities, looking after regular people so that they could get ahead, and he was a fighter for them. And he's the kind of person that exemplifies how good this place can be, and I'm proud to have known him and to be associated with him and to get yelled at by him.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we suspend the rules so others other than senators can speak.
You've heard the motion to suspend the rules for purposes of allowing former members of the House or Senate currently serving as lobbyists onto the floor, in addition to allowing former members of the House to address this from the Senate while considering a memorial. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in recess. Representative Soash. Senator Soash, sorry. Senator Soash.
Madam President, members, it's a pleasure to be back here. This is the first time I've been here since I left a long time ago. But at any rate, it's nice to be here today, and it's nice to be talking about someone as great as Eldon Cooper. And right where Senator Kerr is sitting today, that's where I sat during the first couple of years I was here, and Eldon was at the next seat over. And he taught me a lot about city and county of Denver, which I didn't know. Sometimes when we come in from the hinterland, why we need a little direction we get here, and he took care of that. But the thing about Eldon Cooper that I appreciated most was whenever you had his word on an issue, aye or nay, you had it. He stuck with his word, and that's something that we all tried to do in those days, and I'm sure you do still here today. One other little thing I'll relate to you is Eldon Cooper was always in terrific physical condition. And I recall one time we went down to the Armory, which was down on Spear in those days, and we were going to play basketball, and we were playing against the interns. And so we got ready to play, and they were choosing what man they wanted to guard, and everybody wanted to guard Eldon because he had a little gray in his hair. So we went up, and incidentally, his basketball game resembled a mix between football and basketball. So we got to go in, we went down, started back up, and everybody wanted to switch men on the intern side. So Eldon was, to me, he was one of my real heroes down here, and I know we'll miss him, but the good Lord's put him in a better place. So with that, I want Ruben next. Okay.
Thank you, Senator Soash. Speaker Valdez.
Thank you, Madam President, Senator Talktrop, and members of the Senate. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about a colleague that I had in the House of Representatives. Eldon served there with distinction before he came over to the Senate. One of the things that I remember when I came in, Eldon was already in, and of course, the labor guy, as I came from labor a long time ago. But, you know, as a freshman, Eldon was very good. In fact, I think the next speaker, Senator Gallagher, and I came in together in the House, and I'm sure he remembers the same thing of Eldon coming over to us as new people into the legislature and really taking the time to talk to us, to help us. Always was there when we had a question or anything, which I appreciated at that particular time very much. I still appreciate that. And I remembered that, so when I was there for a number of years and I had new people coming in, I always remembered what Eldon had done, and I wanted to do that for new people. You know, we've talked about the labor leader and the cowboy, and you know, it's a kind of a strange combination in a way, but Eldon fit both to a T. Eldon was a strong labor leader, and a strong cowboy. And when I mean strong, I mean physically strong. I think Senator Soash pointed that out a little bit in those basketball games. But this guy was wiry, strong, muscly, and I remember a lot of the people saying, boy, that's one guy I never want to tangle with physically, and I can see why. But even mentally or in a debate, there weren't too many people that wanted to tangle with Eldon Cooper. He was just that strong person. When he went to the microphone to talk, everybody listened. That was one time in the House that I remembered, even on second reading when members are doing other things other than paying real attention to it. When Eldon Cooper went to the mic, people were paying attention. So that's kind of strong personality he had. So I really appreciate the fact that you are memorializing Eldon. I'm glad that his family's here. They have a lot to be proud of. And I want to thank you, Madam President, and members of the Senate, for giving me this opportunity to talk about a real leader, Eldon Cooper. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Gallagher.
Madam President and members, it's a joy to be with you today to talk about someone who really made a mark here at our Senate. And Reuben and Dick were talking about when they first met Eldon, and I can remember when I first met Eldon, and you reached that hand out and you shook his hand and you felt like you needed to go to the chiropractor to get it put back together. He had a very firm handshake. And when you would listen to him here at this microphone, when he got going on labor issues, it was almost like you were hearing a sermon. He was his style was sort of a biblical style, where if you vote against labor, you're going to go to hell in a handbasket and that kind of stuff. And you've almost fulfilled your Sunday obligation just by listening to him. A friend of mine, Bill Himmelman, was also active in labor and served on council with me in Denver. Eldon once told him that golf was a silly game, and he tossed his clubs in a pond and never went and did it again. And apparently that was the only sport that Eldon was not good at. He was a bowler, a rodeo rider, bronco busting rancher, and a motorcycle enthusiast. I don't know how, I haven't heard that mentioned, so hope that's new information. And the last time I saw Eldon was at a funeral of one of our colleagues. I think it was Jerry Copel who passed. And Eldon reached that hand out. And by gosh, he had the firmest handshake of anybody at the funeral. And he never forgot his roots. And that's a lesson we can all learn. Never forget your roots. And we thank him for that. And I hope my prayer for him and the family is that I hope the angels welcomed him to paradise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Toctrap.
Thank you, Madam President, and just a word of wisdom. Remember what Senator Cooper said, you don't vote for labor, you go to hell. So, just a friendly reminder. It truly is, again, an honor to be able to memorialize this giant of a man, this son of Colorado, who served the state so well and who was loved by his family and loved his family very much. He left a legacy, not only here in the House and Senate, but also with his family. When you look at how many family members are here and children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, he truly did leave a legacy. And with that, I renew my motion for the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 2 and ask for a roll call aye vote.
Thank you. The motion before the Senate is the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 2. A roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Majors, would you please poll the senators?
Aguilar. Aguilar, aye. Balmer. Balmer, aye. Baumgardner. Baumgardner, aye. Brophy. Brophy, aye. Cadman. Cadman, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Grantham. Grantham, aye. Guzman. Guzman, aye. Harvey. Harvey, aye. Heath. Heath, aye. Herpin. Herpin, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Hodge. Hodge, aye. John. John, aye. Johnston. Johnston, aye. Jones. Jones, aye. Kefalis. Kefalis, aye. Kerr. Kerr, aye. King. King, aye. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lundberg. Lundberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Newell. Newell, aye. Nicholson. Nicholson, aye. Renfro. Renfro, aye. Rivera. Rivera, aye. Roberts. Roberts, aye. Scheffel. Scheffel, aye. Schwartz. Schwartz, aye. Stedman. Stedman, aye. Toctrap. Toctrap, aye. Todd. Todd, aye. Ulibarri. Ulibarri, aye. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, aye. Madam President.
Aye.
Madam President, aye.
With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Joint Memorial 2 is adopted. Senator Toctrap.
Thank you, Madam President, and I ask that the President roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Any objection? Seeing none, the President roll call will be added as co-sponsors to Senate Joint Memorial 2. We'll stand in a brief recess to allow members to greet the family.
You probably knew Ted.
The Senate will come back to order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege for Senator Hill.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Hill is granted a moment of personal privilege out of order.
Thank you, Madam.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Madam President, Majority Leader, colleagues. I just would like to indulge your attention for a minute to say welcome to my mother, Trina, who flew in from Virginia. She's a substitute school teacher out in Virginia, and for all the stories I hear her tell now, they probably still don't compare to when I borrowed the tool set from the first grade classroom and took apart the back of the school bus seat on the way home, and the bus driver stopped and escorted me to the front door, and I still am a little bit sore, I think, from the results of my decision to do that, as well as perhaps bringing a cap gun to school in New Jersey was probably not the highlight of her career as a mother, but Mom, you're an inspiration and one of my role models in life. Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege for Senator Guzman and myself to present a tribute, a couple of tributes, actually.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senators Guzman and Heath are granted a moment of personal privilege out of order. Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, today we are honored to present to you and to recognize two professors from our colleges, universities here in Colorado. The Carnegie Foundation has announced its winners of the Outstanding Baccalaureate College Professor positions, and I would like to go first in honoring Ann Williams, who is professor at Metro State University. She has been selected as one of the 4 professors in the United States to be named Outstanding Baccalaureate College Professor by the Carnegie Foundation. She's the Outstanding Baccalaureate College Professor of the Year is chosen on the basis of extraordinary dedication to undergraduate teaching determined by excellence in the following 4 areas: impact on and involvement with undergraduate students, scholarly approach to teaching and learning, contributions to undergraduate education in the institution, the community, and the profession, and support from colleagues and current and former undergraduate students. Professor Williams has been a professor at Metro State University of Denver since 1990. She teaches French in the Modern Languages Department. She's already received many honors for her teaching, back in 2010 as the Denver Faculty Senate Teaching Excellent Award at Metro State University. In 2008, she received the Colorado Congress of Foreign Language Teachers Chris Wells Memorial Creativity Award, and the 2001 Colorado Congress of Foreign Language Teachers Award with McGraw-Hill, and in 2007, her advanced conversation course was selected by the Educational Policy Improvement Center as a College Board Advancement Placement World Languages Best Practices course. Please join me in congratulating and welcoming Professor Ann Williams to the Senate chamber. Professor Williams will receive this tribute. It's the state of Colorado, the Senate and House of Representatives convened in the second regular session of the 69th General Assembly, hereby extends heartiest appreciation and are proud to honor Ann Williams, United States Professor of the Year. And again, this is signed by Morgan Carroll, President of the Senate, and Mark Ferrandino, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Guzman. We are indeed privileged to be able to introduce to you two of these outstanding professors. We are blessed in this state by having outstanding universities and outstanding professors that teach our kids. It's my honor to introduce Professor Stephen Pollack, who's standing in the back over there. And the University of Colorado Physics Professor Stephen Pollack has been named a 2013 U.S. Professor of the Year by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education. As Senator Guzman said, the U.S. Professor of the Year awards recognize the most outstanding undergraduate instructors in the country. Each year, a professor is chosen from 4 institutional categories. Pollack, who is being honored in the category of doctoral and research universities, was chosen from a field of more than 350 distinguished nominees from across the country. Professor Pollack began teaching at CU Boulder in 1993 when he took a job as an assistant professor in the field of theoretical and nuclear physics. Tough to even say that, much less declare yourself an expert in it. Over the last 2 decades, he has taught the full range of physics classes available to undergraduates, from introductory level courses, including the physics of sound and music, to upper division classes for physics majors such as principles of electricity and magnetism, which he is instructing this semester. Pollack, among this award, received the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in STEM Education, Innovation, and Research in 2009, the CU President's Teaching Scholar Award in 2008, the Sigma Pi Sigma Favorite Physics Professor Award multiple times, CU Boulder's Best Should Teach Gold Award in 2006, and the Boulder Faculty Assembly Teaching Excellence Award in 1998, among others. He became a Pew Carnegie National Teaching Scholar in 2001, and CU Boulder Chancellor Phil DeStefano said the following: Stephen Pollack's work is a credit to him, our physics department, and the dynamic teaching and research of our entire faculty. And like Senator Guzman just read for Ann Lawrence, the following is being presented by all of us. The state of Colorado, the Senate and House of Representatives hereby extends heartiest appreciation and is proud to honor Stephen Pollack. CU Boulder Physics Professor Stephen Pollack was named a 2013 U.S. Professor of the Year in the category of doctoral and research universities by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education. He teaches undergraduate physics classes with a philosophy rooted in using evidence-based research to support classroom instruction. Pollack's passion for teaching overflows into his research through studying the effectiveness of pedagogical techniques. He has earned numerous teaching laurels, and again, this is presented on behalf of all of us and is signed by Morgan Carroll, President of the Senate, and Mark Ferrandino, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Congratulations, and let us all congratulate Professor Stephen Pollack.
Third reading of bills calendar. Senate will stand in a brief recess to allow us to greet our guests.
I just asked, oh.
The Senate will come back to order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for a moment of personal privilege for Senator Balmer.
Motion is to grant Senator Balmer a moment of personal privilege out of order. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. I think you're overruled. Ayes have it. Senator Balmer is granted a moment of personal privilege out of order. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, Madam President, if I could request that the President Pro Tem come to the well with me, I just want to...
You can request it, but I think it's, she's looking like your request is denied.
Playing hard to get, okay. Well, if you haven't seen today's Denver Post, and I actually get the Denver Post delivered to my house at 3:45 in the morning, and that's when I start reading it. And I saw at the top of the Denver Post, they had a little teaser thing that said, go back to the back section. And I have to admit that I seldom read the gardening section. But this gardening section, today's paper in Denver Post, is a full feature article about our colleague, Lucia Guzman, and her garden, and it's an organic garden. So look at how beautiful she looks on the front page. And then look at this picture of her in action. Look at that. Isn't that just awesome? And that... We knew her when, and now she is, of course, a total media star. So would you please join me in clapping for our colleague, Lucia Guzman.
If you're nice to her, she'll give you gardening tips, in addition to running the Senate. Third reading of bills calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1007?
House Bill 1007 by Representative Hamner, Senator Crowder, concerning the authority of county governments to limit certain forms of fire and in connection therewith permitting county governments to restrict agricultural burning during periods of high fire danger.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the call of the Senate.
Call of the Senate has been moved and sustained. The sergeants lock the doors, keep the senators from leaving, retrieve any missing senators. And Mr. Majors, would you please call the roll?
Aguilar. Balmer. Baumgartner. Brophy.
Mark.
Cadman. Cadman. Crowder.
I didn't think so.
Crowder. Grantham. Guzman. Harvey. Heath. Herpin. Hill. Hodge. John. Johnston. Jones. Kafalis. Kerr. King.
Keep going. I know we're King.
Lambert. Lundberg. Marble. Newell. Nicholson. Renfro. Rivera. Roberts. Scheffel. Schwartz. Stedman. Stocktrop. Todd. Ulibarri. Zenzinger. Cadman.
Want to raise it and we'll go move ahead? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Ing. Madam President.
Here. Mr. Majority Leader.
Move the call be raised.
For the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The call will be raised. Third reading of bills calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1007?
House Bill 1007 by Representative Hamner and Senator Crowder concerning the authority of county governments to limit certain forms of fire and in connection therewith permitting county governments to restrict agricultural burning during periods of high fire danger.
Senator Crowder. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. At the request of the sponsor, I move we lay over House Bill 1007 until May 8th.
For the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. House Bill 1007 will lay over until May 8th. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 158?
Senate Bill 158 by Senators Stedman and Jones, Representative Hollinghorst, concerning the harmonization of statutory recall election provisions with the recall provisions of the state constitution to reflect the manner in which contemporary elections are conducted and in connection therewith aligning circulator regulation and petition requirements with initiative and referendum circulator and petition requirements.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Senate Bill 158 on third reading and final passage. Any
discussion? Question before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 158. Senator. Are you wanting to go back to a discussion phase?
Like a senatorial 30.
Senator Cadman.
Thank you, President Carroll. Pardon me, members, I need glasses now to find my glasses. You have them? Do I have any time left? Members, obviously we're not supporting Senate Bill 158. We had a long discussion about the Constitution yesterday, and we think that's really the problem with Senate Bill 158 is that it doesn't honor the Constitution. It is our operational manual. Article 5 of the Constitution is about us. How many think we're the legislative branch of the government? Well, the Constitution says we're the department. Close enough. I thought we were the branch. The Constitution says we're the department. Section 2, so Section 1, then Section 2 tells us how to run elections, when to have them, how to fill vacancies, requires us to take an oath of office, which we all do. An oath of office. It doesn't tell us what the oath is, but it tells us what it must include. Before he, I probably should say or she, but we have to fix that with a preferred measure, enters upon his official duties shall take an oath of or affirmation to support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Colorado and to faithfully perform the duties of his office according to the best of their abilities. And I think we probably strive to do that day after day after day. Section 2. Section 1. Section 1, the very first section of the authority of the legislature is what grants us that authority from the people. The legislative power of the state shall be vested, shall be given, shall be vested in the General Assembly, consisting of a Senate and, to some dismay, a House of Representatives, both to be elected by the people. But here's the most important part of Section 1. Already, I mean, they are just now in the Constitution giving us our authority, vesting in us the authority of the people to represent them. And then it says, but the people reserve to themselves, the power to propose laws and amendments to the Constitution, laws and amendments to the Constitution, and to enact or reject the same at the polls, independent of the General Assembly, and also reserve power at their own option to approve or reject at the polls any act or item, section, or part of any act of the General Assembly. Reserved to themselves. First they grant us the power, and then the immediate next step is to reserve to themselves everything that I just shared with you. So we, with the people, are the department of the legislature. We're not just the branch. We don't just come here and act independently of them. They vest in us that power to represent them here. Reserving the power of statutory changes or constitutional changes to themselves. This is clear. I think they had the insight of the Founding Fathers, trusting themselves with the power of how they are governed. They are governed, instead of turning it completely over to a governing body, which means to me that they were interested in being governed, but they were not interested in being ruled. Why were they so afraid of power being vested in this place that the very first caveat was to reserve the power to themselves? I think we know why. They didn't want to be ruled. That is pretty clear. Article 21 is pretty clear too. It's about recalls. And although we heard countless allegations that the recall election process was not clear, that it was confusing, and that in the historic recalls that were settled on September 10th, this constitutional provision itself was to blame for the multitude of election problems. Had a lot of lawsuits, had a lot of challenges. Those statements were shared by the sponsors. They said the provision needs clarity, that the Constitution created the confusion, that the Constitution caused voter disenfranchisement. But the Constitution is very clear. And the courts said the Constitution is very clear. Judge McGahey referred to the plain language of the Constitution, the plain language, which is pretty unusual, and I'm not a lawyer, but when you can actually read this stuff and understand it, it must be pretty plain. The plain language. He was not confused. The judge ruled that the Constitution trumps the statutory language of 1303 on mail balloting. The Constitution will also trump the convoluted language of Senate Bill 158 and the newly created, I would actually submit tortured, definitions generated in Senate Bill 158. We're now twisting what election day means. Now it's an election period. Can you even make sense of the title? Have you read the title? It's fantastic. Concerning the harmonization, harmony, of statutory recall election provisions with recall provisions in the state constitution to reflect the manner in which contemporary elections are conducted. Harmonization, reflect, contemporary, tortured. A tortured title. I think this is pretty consistent with a ruling that came out this summer. And when the judge said the absurd result here would be to ignore the clear language of Article 21 and to let the statute control simply because it would be easier or more expedient to do so. That certainly captures the concept, right? Harmonize. But constitutional mandates cannot be ignored because of inertia, nor can a constitutional mandate be ignored because it's supposedly archaic. Harmonization reflect the manner in which contemporary elections are conducted. You know what this sounds like? This sounds like a lot of what we do here in other areas. It's the proverbial cart before the horse. This is the tactic that we use here, and we just did the other day on a bill to change the law to comply with something that departments are doing. So frankly, when you hear that, doesn't it sound like the departments are breaking the law and we have to fix the law to comply? Because that's what we're doing. We have to codify now something in statute which we know has been happening illegally. Sometimes on some of those proposals we say, why don't we just stop doing it? And then we've complied. So we changed the laws to reflect current practices, to reflect the practices and ignore the Constitution. The backside of the mirror, ignore the Constitution. This is a huge leap. It's unfounded. It is unprecedented. It's unacceptable. The people reserve for themselves the right to disapprove of what we pass here, but we're also cutting them out because we think we're going to have a safety clause on this one. This is so important to them that we have to protect them from their opportunity to fix it. Hi, I'm from the legislature and I'm here to protect you. May I come in? The courts found problems with our election laws. They were confusing. They were not aligned with the constitutional directives.
Senator Kevin, you have 20 seconds. Do you want to roll into your second 10 minutes?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes. The confusion rests right here in this chamber. How many bills have we had now in the last couple of years to clarify, to fix, to affix, to correct? And how many cases have now been litigated, and how many more will come with this? The Constitution on this is clear. It's the governing document. The people have demanded that any changes of this document must have their approval. And we can't pretend to change the Constitution by changing a law. We can't pretend. We have to amend it. And we must ask the people who reserve this right unto themselves if they want their Constitution changed. This is theirs. They are part of this department according to the power that they gave us. It seems to me they were somewhat cynical, and it's apparent that because of proposals like this, that they were absolutely justified. Absolutely justified. They're watching us. They are paying attention. I wondered yesterday, why were the TV cameras here? It's been a while since we got that kind of coverage. Because this is important. It's shocking. It's shocking. I think this is one of the most important votes that we will ever cast. We had a couple votes already with an opportunity to say no. The legislative power of the state shall be vested in the General Assembly, consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives. The very first thing is how we have our power, and the very next thing is everything that keeps it in check. Why? Exactly so we don't pass bills like Senate Bill 158. They've already said no. The courts have already said no. We don't have to redefine the definition of no. Vote to support the Constitution. Vote to support the people that elected us to support their Constitution. The people that sent us here with the requirement that we swear an oath to support and defend their Constitution, their rights. Vote no.
Senator Stebbins.
Thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, I would respectfully request your aye vote on Senate Bill 158, and I'd like to just spend a moment explaining why I think this is something that the Constitution directs the legislature to do. Now, the minority leader is correct. He cited from Article 5, Section 2 of our state constitution in the second paragraph where it says, "Every member of the General Assembly, before he enters upon his official duties, shall take an oath or affirmation." Now, the Constitution says he and his. And the minority leader suggested that maybe we need a referred measure to correct that reference, because a literal reading of that would suggest that women elected to this body are not required to take that same oath. Now, of course, that would be an absurd result and probably conflict with other provisions in the state constitution in Article 2 that refer to the equality of the sexes. But colleagues, it is not necessary for us to amend the state constitution to have the requirement that he take an oath of office before entering a seat in this General Assembly, because we've passed a statute, Colorado Revised Statute 2-4-103, that says every word importing the masculine gender may only extend to and be applied, or only may extend to and be applied to females, and things as well as males. Every word importing the feminine gender only may extend to and be applied to males. And so, even though the Constitution was written in an era that was perhaps more sexist than our society today, we have passed laws to say wherever you see he or him or male, you can also interpret that to include women on equal footing. We did that by interpretation. We did that by definition. We have the power to legislate, to give effect, and to modernize the words in our state constitution, and the statutes are replete with places where we have done exactly that for numerous provisions in the state constitution. The suggestion that it is unconstitutional for this General Assembly to adopt legislation defining the words used in the state constitution when they are not themselves defined within the body of the Constitution is not supported by what you will find throughout the statutes. We have that power to legislate in such a manner to give effect to the provisions in our state constitution, and I would submit to you that that's exactly what we're doing in Senate Bill 158. We are defining a term to make it work with the contemporary manner in which elections are conducted. This is a solution. I know the court case that was cited repeatedly during second reading yesterday suggested that we should repeal Article 21 of the Constitution or amend it, but the judge was sitting as a judge, not as a legislature. The judge did not have the legislative power to do what we are doing in Senate Bill 158. The judge was required to interpret the law before him or her in that case. And that's what produced the ruling last summer. That's why we're here this year to change the law, so that a judge can interpret a new set of laws, a new explanation in statute of how these words are to be read together to make sense of them so that the timelines for administering a recall election work and allow all of the modern processes for challenging petitions and curing petitions, for people to petition their names onto the ballot, so that there is time for all of that to happen, and, yes, for successor candidates to petition their name and their candidacy onto the ballot, and for that ballot to be printed and made available and mailed, and voters to receive that in a timely manner, that they have time to cast their ballot and mail it back in and have their vote count. That's what this bill accomplishes. I think this bill accomplishes exactly what the state constitution specifically empowers this General Assembly to do in Article 21, Section 4, where it says, legislation may be enacted to facilitate the operations of the recall provisions in the state constitution. The right to recall an elected official in this state is a constitutional right. The right to vote in this state and throughout our nation is a constitutional right. And this legislature has a duty to legislate in such a manner to protect and promote the constitutional rights of our citizens. That's what we're doing with Senate Bill 158, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, you know, the right of recall in our state constitution is fundamental. The right to vote in our state and federal constitution is also fundamental. The combination of the two creates a supercharged responsibility for us and for our citizens. I want to address three issues that have come up in the past, yesterday and in committee. What the court said about the 15-day court case. Senate Bill 158 is required to preserve people's right to vote on recalls. And third, people have a fundamental and evolving right to vote in elections, including recalls. I agree with the previous speaker. The Judge McGahey, was not confused. And he explicitly stated, this case is actually fairly simple, whether the 15-day provision is allowed before a date of election is set. That's it, 15 days before that time. He also said the legislature created what appears to be an intelligent, workable, comprehensive process for conducting elections, including recalls, by using mail ballots. This is the judge speaking. He only ruled on 15 days, and he said mail ballots make sense. Senate Bill 158 also preserves people's right to vote on a recall. Senate Bill 158 is constitutional and, in fact, is required to sync the state constitution and statute. It uses the legislature's constitutional authorization to enact legislation to facilitate operation of Article 21 and in accordance with the General Assembly's plenary power. Senate Bill 158 amends recall-related statutes to conform them to the Constitution in a way that recognizes how contemporary elections are conducted. The intent is not to curtail or abrogate people's fundamental right to recall, but to preserve that right while clarifying the recall process and providing for mail ballot elections. Furthermore, the General Assembly isn't simply making preemptive changes in advance of hypothetical issues, but attempting to respond directly to the issues that arose in the 2013 recalls in a way that preserves the mail ballot regime enacted last year. This plenary power for us to define the terms in the Constitution is relatively common. If you look at the statute books at the back of the room, it's full of them. For example, Amendment 41 that created Article 24 in the state constitution. Section 9 of that article contains language similar to Article 21, which is what we're speaking to now. The General Assembly enacted Section 24-18.5-1 to implement the Article 29. And my favorite, in the water law context, the legislatures defined the term beneficial use. How much do we talk about beneficial use here? We define it. And we talk about it a lot, and we redefine it a lot, and it evolves through time. We have a fundamental right, this is the third point, we have a fundamental right to vote that we must exercise and protect to sustain our democracy. I'll direct you to the legislative declaration. A lot of times we blow by these declarations when we're reading these bills, but I think this is important. If you go to page 3, line B, or line 6, print B, the people of the United States have a long history of increasing voter participation, including the 15th, 19th, 23rd, 24th, and 26th Amendments of the United States Constitution, which amendments enabled voting by persons of all races, women, residents of Washington, D.C. It banned poll taxes and lowered the minimum age to 18 years. The next paragraph, Colorado helped pioneer access to women's right to vote, and that was adopted in the United States later, by the United States later. Colorado has a history of being a vote by mail state for purposes of increasing voter participation. We've been doing this for over 15 years. Losing access to mail ballots is a concern, especially for the elderly, persons with disabilities, working families, and other persons who are most likely to vote by mail. The state has a responsibility to electors to remove barriers to participation in voting in all elections, including recall elections. Let's think about this a minute. Who was given the right to vote initially in our country? White males who own property. That's evolved. In 1870, Grant, under President Grant, the 15th Amendment was adopted. It said there's no abridgment on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. In 1893, under Benjamin Harrison, Colorado adopted the women's right for suffrage. We were the second state to do so. Wyoming, the equality state, preceded us. But we helped blaze that path. 1920, Woodrow Wilson, 19th Amendment, now enabled women to vote. In 1961, under Kennedy, the 23rd Amendment included Washington, D.C., so that they could vote and have a voice, because that's what this is all about, right? In 1962, under Kennedy, the 24th Amendment eliminated poll taxes. And in 1971, this is my favorite because I got to vote, under President Nixon, the 25th Amendment, those 18 years of age can vote. This is about enfranchising Coloradans to have a voice on recalls. Yes, they have a right to a recall, and they also have a fundamental right to vote in that recall. That's what this bill does. Let's let people exercise their right to recall and their fundamental right to vote, and vote for Senate Bill 158.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, what we've been listening to are a lot of straw man arguments trying to justify the fundamental point of Senate Bill 158, which is let's change the Constitution with a statute. The judge has been quoted somewhat who determined that the recall elections of last year were not legal as a mail ballot process. On page 50, the judge said, with all due respect to the legislature, it either did not consider or chose to ignore the clear language of Article 21. And then on page 52, if Article 21 stands in the way of what the legislature considers the efficient way to conduct elections, the remedy is to repeal Article 21, amend Article 21, but not to pretend it doesn't exist. And that's the real question before us. Does the Constitution provide or require certain elements that in order to conduct a mail ballot election needs to be changed. Now, the senator from Boulder gave a long list of changes that have occurred to election law. And did you notice what those changes were? They were constitutional changes. Changes to the Constitution. I remember that change when the voter age was changed from 21 to 18. I was 20. I was thrilled that I could vote in that election rather than waiting for one more cycle. But it was a constitutional change. It was not, in that case, because it was a federal election, Congress saying, well, you know, times have changed and we're going to modify this, and because, you know, it's just a little bit different than it was back in the 18th century, we'll allow 18-year-olds to vote. No, they understood the Constitution said 21 or older. So the way you change that is you change the Constitution. You don't try to finagle around it with statute. The distinction here is whether or not you have a respect for the Constitution as a living document, which means we can change it any way we want, anyhow we want, because we're in charge, or do you have a respect for the Constitution as that contract with the people of Colorado that we do take an oath to obey and to follow the clear reading of the Constitution? With respect to this, there was a judge who looked very long and hard and said, here's the way you change it. You change the Constitution. Senate Bill 158 does not change the Constitution. It finagles around it. This is so clear. I mean, we have several debates and discussions on matters of policy, and we have a disagreement on whether it should be this or that. But this rises to a whole new level, because here it's not where shall the policy be. Here it is, just how much of the Constitution can we ignore? How can we twist it around? This argument that because the Constitution has a male pronoun, if you were to really go down, dig down deep and understand the use of the English language, that's used as a universal sense quite often. How about this sentence? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, was that intended to mean all male only? No. That is nonsense. The use of the English language was commonly accepted as all men means all people within the human race. There's no question about that. And that's another straw man argument to try to push us down a, well, you know, obviously we have to adjust things here a little bit. I concur when we clarify that with he or she, but I'm not troubled with the language that says he shall. I understand their use of that. They understood the use of that. If not, then when women's suffrage was put into the Colorado Constitution by a constitutional change, by the way, then that would have been adjusted as well. This is a completely different issue. This is an issue of, do you really abide by the Constitution, or do you try to finagle around it? The concept of elections was an election day. That has been slowly changed, I'll certainly grant, by this legislature. And it happened decades ago when the element of the absentee voter, which was an exception to the rule, but an accommodation of those who just could not get to the polls on that day, was expanded to make it more, you used to have a reason. You used to have to write in and explain, I'm going to be out of town. I cannot change that. I do have to have this ballot. Then it was expanded to anybody can, and then it was expanded to the more generally accepted mail ballot of by request. And then this legislature last year chose to throw out the election day and mail out ballots exclusively, and got away with it in some respects, but when it came to the recalls, it runs head on to the requirements in the Constitution. And if you want to conform that new policy to the terms of the Constitution, you need to change the Constitution. You can't get away with it any other way. And I'll leave you with this. I've said it again and again, but I'm going to underscore it with one more time. This is not just a policy change. This is an indication of the respect given to the Constitution. This is trying to put blinders on to the real truth of the matter and saying, well, when it gets inconvenient to our policies, if we can finagle around the Constitution, we will. Because that's what Senate Bill 158 does. It violates the Constitution.
Madam President.
Thank you, Madam President. We have had some members indicate that they're not attorneys, but that there's some thoughts about what is or isn't constitutional. As one of the members who is an attorney, I would point out that, as others have, throughout the entire Colorado Revised Statutes, we have, in hundreds of occasions, on previous example, defined undefined terms. Where the state constitution is silent, or where terms are undefined, for hundreds of years, you and me both, all of us in this chamber in our time we have served, and since the inception of statehood, have done, which is a very normal legal precept, which is we have every right by statute to define undefined terms. What was pointed out in this court case was a little bit of an admonishment that maybe the legislature failed to consider, or for whatever reason, we basically failed to change state law to remove confusing, conflicting, and an unworkable process. What we have right now today is a choice, which is to leave the status quo, and the status quo, if we do nothing, means that people who have a constitutional right and are eligible to vote, not all of those people will be able to exercise their constitutional rights to vote. If we leave it the way it is today, we have a confusing timeline where the folks who are implementing these elections really don't know how under this mess, because we've failed to clarify a timeline. In some ways, Senate Bill 158 is very easy. We're making the changes to the state timelines and defining an undefined term so that everybody who wants to vote, who is eligible to vote, can vote. I would just say that the argument that we cannot define an undefined constitutional term, if that's true, then just realize how many other parts of the statute, including in your own bills, you are arguing against. There is no court that would tell us that we do not have the right to define undefined terms. So I just want to be very clear for the record that this is a completely normal and usual ability of a state legislature or the people to do. It's true we could have changed the state constitution, but frankly, if you show some measure and care before you change a constitution, if there is a way within state statute to make the system work, to actually give fuller effect to people's constitutional rights, then shame on us if we don't. There is a constitutional right to recall. Senate Bill 158 gives further and greater effect to that constitutional right. There is a constitutional right to vote, and Senate Bill 158 gives further and greater effect to that right to vote. Doing nothing disenfranchises people of their constitutional rights. So the only constitutional argument I've heard against the bill is a theory that we do not have the power to define undefined terms, that somehow by doing that, that is unconstitutional. Folks, that would radically, radically, radically change our entire state code if that proposition were true. But it's not. We don't always get to pick what we inherit. We inherited a very old set of laws that were originally created in the Constitution before we had early voting, before we had mail ballot voting. It was done at a time really before we did have modern elections. So the question before us today is if we can adjust state timelines and define a term that makes it easier for people to implement elections and for people to exercise their constitutional right to vote. For me, the vote that respects the constitutions and people's fundamental constitutional rights is a yes vote on Senate Bill 158. It's a little hard to hear about these truths are all created equal, are all self-evident, that all men are created equal, when you realize, as a matter of law at the time, women were not deemed to be a subset of men because at that point in time, legally, women were property and chattel. And that's not equality because men weren't chattel, they weren't property at that point in time. At that point in time, women couldn't vote. That's not self-evident equality. It has taken some need to do things over the time. I think what's most important here is at the end of the day, we can either leave it confusing, which means we wind up in court, and we have people who are constitutionally eligible to exercise a right to vote who will not be able to do, or we can do the measured and I think responsible thing here today, which is to remove ambiguity, help people have smooth administration of elections, and give full respect for our state and federal constitutions for all those who are eligible to vote to exercise those constitutional rights to vote, and would ask for an aye vote.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President. Boy, so many things to respond to. A couple of things I want to get out of the way pretty quickly, and that is in 1776, it is the unfortunate fact that some men and women were property, but it had nothing to do with their gender. Unfortunately, it had to do with their legal status as a slave, which many, if you want to look at our Constitution, did in fact stand against and do what they could to change, but that's a discussion and a debate for a very different time. But the point, well, okay, here's another point. I'm glad I'm not an attorney. I am very grateful that I am not an officer of the court trained by our law schools to be an expert in sophistry. No, I didn't check my brains in at the door because I don't have that Esquire behind my name. As a matter of fact, most of the people of Colorado are not attorneys. And I'm glad they aren't. Hard to say what this world would be like if they were. But the Constitution was not written for the courts and the attorneys. The Constitution was written by and for the people in terms that can be understood and followed. And we've had no problem with that. Now, there were some changes made by this legislature that made their statutory changes impossible because of what the Constitution says. And I will still insist, absolutely insist, that Senate Bill 158 finagles around what the Constitution clearly states. And when it was brought before a judge, the judge clearly understood that as well. The question before us on Senate Bill 158 is, are we going to violate the Constitution by trying to work around it, or are we going to find a solution that is constitutional? If you want to find that solution, bring a referred measure, or go out as a citizen and initiate the process outside of the legislature. Change the Constitution. This is a very fundamental point, and a question before us is, do we violate the Constitution with our laws, our statutes, or do we follow the Constitution? Sure, I know that you can make this convoluted, tortured argument to try to get around it, but that's exactly what it is. That's what that judge understood it to be. That's what the people of Colorado, if they sit and simply read it, understand it to be. We're taking this once upon a time well understood concept of when an election was held, and now torturing the definition and twisting it to somehow try to conform it to this impossible situation within the recall election law of our Constitution. Little parenthetical observation here. I find it curious that there is such a rush to change the recall law, a law that was exercised, by my knowledge, once for the legislature in Colorado's history. And occasionally it does come up in lower areas. It happened once in a town that I represent. So it does need to be addressed. But I don't see the rush that it has to happen right here, right now with Senate Bill 158 because we don't have time to change the Constitution. That's absurd. Senate Bill 158 does, by a clear reading of the Constitution, violate the Constitution. It tries to twist what it states as setting the date for an election. It's your choice. I choose to vote no on Senate Bill 158 and to continue to follow the Constitution to the best of my ability.
Senator Brophy?
Thank you, President Carroll. And I also will ask for a no vote on this for a host of reasons, one of which is the optics. Just because we had what was described by the sponsor as a less than ideal set of recall elections, although some of us, as a side note, might think they were quite ideal, the necessity to rush this through at this moment isn't there. For those of you who don't know, I represent Elbert County, and I have noticed that Elbert County has recall elections on a regular basis. It's almost like political sport in that county, and if you were trying to fix the ability to do mail ballot elections on the rush, you might have noticed that recall elections at the local level have been going on for years. So we don't need to rush this through. We don't need to have a safety clause on this, which reads, for those who are watching and don't know legislative terminology, a General Assembly hereby finds, determines, and declares that this act is necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, and safety. There's nothing in this act that really requires a safety clause unless it's the safety of your electoral seat that you're worried about protecting. So the optics of this are bad at a time when political approval ratings for Congress are in the low teens, probably not much higher for this body if we were to ask the people of Colorado. This makes it worse. It looks like a sore loser bill. It really does. And that's good enough reason to, instead of jamming this through a late bill, rushed through the process, to instead refer it to the people. And that's what should happen in this case. Now, we had a previous speaker suggest that the legislature has the right to define undefined terms. Okay, I'll accept that we do have that right if that's what it takes to implement the Constitution. What is undefined about day? It's a 24-hour period, and we all know that. There is nothing at all undefined about day. But this bill redefines day. This bill redefines election day to a 22-day period. That's election month, not election day. And that is absurd. We do not have the right to redefine things into absurdity here. You know, there are some states that ban the sale of alcohol on election day. Under this bill, if there was a recall going on, it would be a ban on alcohol sales for 22 days. That's absurd. If you really want to fix this, and it may be worthy of a fix because so many people in this state, before you forced them to do all mail ballot, so many people in this state liked to vote by mail. Then fix it the right way. Refer a measure to the people so that we don't have the absurdity of redefining day from 24 hours to 22 days. Vote no on this. Give us a referred measure, and we can put it to the people in the proper manner so that they will feel like they have been honored and that their Constitution is also honored.
Senator, I had Crowder next, but.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been up here listening to this for 2 days, and I've yet to hear what caused the recall. It seems like what we're trying to fix, something, and we're missing the point of what caused it. In my opinion, if we represent our districts and represent our constituents, this wouldn't even be a factor. So I think what we need to do is realize that to the state of Colorado, this looks like it's a loser's issue that's trying to fix something, which I think the real fix in this entire thing is to represent your people, represent your districts, and by all means uphold the Constitution. Now, I know that's a difference of opinion, but that's what brought this on. You know, if in fact, what I've heard is lawyers on both sides, and both of them have very defensible situations, and they define it very well. But I do not know that unless we go to the Constitution and fix it, that this statutory part is no more than a short case for another court hearing. So I would, I'm going to vote no on this because I do believe that the intent of it there is not directed at what the problem is, and that's we have to represent the people. They're the ones that make this decision. This actually looks like it's harder for them to make the recall. But I think the recall of what we did experience was something that we went through in historical fashion. I think we just need to learn from that. But I cannot see that fixing something without addressing what exactly the problem is does not really fix it. It just puts it in a different aspect. So I thank you for your time.
Senator Harvey? Senator Renfro?
Thank you, Madam President. The senator from Ray kind of hit the points that, as I've sat and listened to debate and read and researched and looked at emails, that really strikes me on this bill. Page 4 of the bill in the declaration, legislative declaration on line 16 says, "It is therefore the intent of the General Assembly to harmonize statutory recall election provisions with the Constitution." Is that really what we're doing here? Or are we trying to harmonize our Constitution with what we want as our recall elections? I think it's the latter is what we're really doing here. And I think that's what the American people are tired of, is legislatures and congressmen and politicians
changing the terms to fit the argument that they want. Political correctness, you name it. Look at how we change words today to mean what we want, and that's what we are doing in this bill. Election day. The president talked about we have the power to define undefined terms. That is very true. I agree with that statement. But as the senator from Ray talked, this is not an undefined term. Day, date. I bet I could ask my sixth grade boys that question and they would have an answer that would be different than what our definition is going to be. I bet I could talk to the fourth graders that come here that may be sitting up in the galley right now and ask them what a day is. And I guarantee you there's not a single one that would say it's 22 days. And that's what we are doing in this bill. And that is unconstitutional, plainly unconstitutional. This article is self-executing, is what our Constitution says. This is not a term that we can redefine. I would ask for a no vote on this bill. Let's refer it to the people. Let's do it the right way. If this is how we want to hold our recall elections, and let's not try to fool people and disenfranchise people by changing this definition to fit what we think it should be. Last thing I'd like to say also is we talked about why are we doing this? So that everybody who is eligible and wants to vote can vote, is one of the quotes that I wrote down. Is that really the case of what we're doing with this then? I thought we had testimony yesterday about military provisions, 45 days. So are we really doing that, or are we just defining this to fit exactly what we want and what we think the outcome of our election should be because we were angry with the outcome, instead of really looking at the picture, the problem, if there is a problem, and being honest to fix the entire issue? This is embarrassing and insulting what we're doing to the people of Colorado with this.
Senator Harvey.
Thank you, Madam President. I honestly wasn't going to come up and speak until you spoke, Madam President. But your last comment that unless we pass this, people will be denied their right to vote. That's the justification for passing this bill. Unless we pass this, people will be denied their right to vote. How do you come to that conclusion? Because a bill that was passed last May will not be able to be implemented? To require all mail ballots for all elections, and that is sent down by the heavens, that defines somebody's right to vote. And if we deny them that protection under House Bill 1303, that we are, by fiat, denying the citizens their right to vote. So every election in the United States since its beginning is not appropriate, is not constitutional, because they didn't have mail ballots. So every election has been unconstitutional because we have denied people their right to vote. The combined voter turnout in the recall elections for Pueblo and Colorado Springs was 29.19%. Remember, that wasn't a presidential election year. That wasn't an off-year election. That was an off-year election. It was held in September. And so we had a low voter turnout. Does that mean that people were disenfranchised? Does that mean that people were denied their right to vote? Every single person had the ability to go to a polling site. Every single person had the ability to go on Saturdays and Sundays. Every single person had the ability to request a mail ballot and vote by mail. Every single person had the ability to have somebody come to their senior citizen home and get their ballots there that way. They were not denied their right to vote any more than they were in the presidential election of 2012 when we elected our president under the same rules that we did in the recall elections. If you wanted to request an absentee ballot, you could request an absentee ballot. If you wanted to sign up on a permanent mail-in ballot, you could do that. What about the coordinated election? Remember, the coordinated election had all mail ballots. Same counties, 39.69% turnout. In the 2013 election that was all mail ballot, does that mean we disenfranchised 60% of the voters in El Paso County and Pueblo? Is that the argument that if we do not pass this bill, we are denying people their constitutional right to vote? In the 2013 election, 60% of the citizens of Pueblo and El Paso County exercised their right not to vote. Not to vote. Just like in the recall elections, 70% of the voters exercised their right not to vote. Just because you exercised your right not to vote does not mean you were disenfranchised and denied your right to vote. But is that truly the only argument you have for why you would deny the citizens their right to vote on your amending the Constitution? The other argument was that the judges were interpreting the law that was before him, quote unquote. And he didn't have this bill in front of him. That's right. He had 1303 and the Constitution in front of him. And the Constitution says that any citizen has the right to petition on the ballot up to 15 days prior to the election. That's what the Constitution says. And he looked at 1303 and said that the absurd results here would be to ignore the clear language of Article 21 and let the statute control simply because it would be easier or more expedient to do so. But the constitutional mandates cannot be ignored because of inertia, or can a constitutional mandate be ignored because it is supposedly archaic? The argument is that this bill is over 100 years old, and so therefore we must think about how we can change it so that people are not denied their constitutional right to vote. Well, what other things are 100 years old? Article 2, Section 3, the inalienable right to acquire, possess, and protect private property. That was put in 1876. The free and open elections, not subject to civil or military interference, put in 1876. This is my favorite. I have a list of about 15 here. This is my favorite. The power to initiate referendum reserved to the people. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. This recall statute was put in here by the people. That was put in 1776 into the Constitution. That was 100 years, that's over 100 years old, right? This is actually my favorite one. The governor's power to grant reprieves and pardons. The governor's right. Yes, what we are talking about is redefining a term. And that term says, the governor shall thereupon order and fix the date for holding the election. We are defining the undefined. I don't think that's undefined. Governor Hickenlooper, when he assigned the date for these recalls, knew what that meant. Everybody knew what that meant. The candidates being recalled certainly knew what that meant. Their day of reckoning was coming. The voters were having their right to recall them, and that date was fixed. So we are saying with this bill that we have the ability to redefine the intent of the law. When we change gender from what the original English language meant with he or him, that was the original English language. Are you saying the original English language of fix the date has changed from what it was 100 years ago when we wrote this? No, you are changing the intent of the statute. You are changing the intent of the Constitution. You are amending the Constitution, and you are doing it without a vote of the people. This article is self-executing. This article is self-executing, meaning you do not need to redefine anything here. It stands on its own. And when the judges ruled that 15 days means 15 days from the time the governor set the date, they didn't have to try to judge on what set the date meant. That is self-evident. That is self-evident. Set the date is the date of the election. You do not need to redefine that. You do not need to have a definition. You do not have a court deciding what that means. It is self-evident. The date is the date that the governor set the date. Lastly,
you have 30 seconds. You want to roll over?
Please. Lastly, campaign finance law. Campaign finance law says reporting is tied to X days before the recall election for those candidates running for office. They have to file their reports X days before the recall election. Confusing? Confusing? What will candidates have to do to report? What day is it that under Senate Bill 158 will these candidates have to report their campaign finances? Will it be 22 days before? Because we are defining in statute the date for holding the election means the first day of which the recall ballots are to be made available to the eligible electors to vote. 22 days before the election? 15 days before the election? 5 days before the election? Or election day? What is it? What's election day? That's what the question is. What is election day? And if you are redefining what an election day is, go to the voters. Talk about disenfranchising voters. Mail ballots. Military voters. Military voters are required to get their ballots 45 days before the election. Your bill is saying it's 22 days before the election when ballots will go out. If the president's argument is that we will be denying their constitutional right to vote if we don't pass this bill, then I would argue you are denying military voters their constitutional right to vote because of this bill. Because state statute says 45 days, federal statute says 45 days. And if you are saying that ballots can go out 22 days before Election Day, then you are denying military voters their constitutional right to vote. If you want to vote for that, go right ahead. Go right ahead. But understand, if your argument is we have to pass this bill to save people's constitutional rights to vote, you're not doing it. You are denying military voters their constitutional right to vote. But it is ironic that you have a safety clause in this bill, denying the citizens their right to go to the ballot box and overturn statute. That's what the safety clause means. Is we are denying the voters their right to overturn statute because it is an emergency. You are disenfranchising every citizen in the state of Colorado their constitutional right to overturn your statutes because you think it is an emergency. Why? What is the emergency? Do you anticipate there being a recall this summer? Otherwise, why do it? Why have a safety clause on there? Because the bill would go into effect later in the summer without the safety clause. But you think it is such an emergency that you have to deny the citizens the right to recourse and go to the ballot box to overturn your law because you were afraid of a recall election this summer. Otherwise, why are you disenfranchising every single citizen of the state of Colorado? You want to talk about denying people their constitutional right to vote? Let's talk to the military voters. Let's talk to the citizens of the state of Colorado about the safety clause. Let's talk to the judges who have already told you on multiple court rulings you cannot go around the Constitution within this segment of the Constitution. You have to go to the ballot box. What are you afraid of?
Further discussion? Senator Herpin.
Thank you, Madam President. My son-in-law is a Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy. He and my daughter are Colorado residents and registered voters in Colorado. So certainly I want them to have the opportunity to vote in every election. I'd like to call your attention to the legislative declaration on page 4, starting at line 18, number 3, where this bill recognizes that it does not conform with the Uniform Military and Overseas Voters Act, as the previous speaker pointed out so eloquently. But what disturbs me the most is the last sentence of this declaration. As this conflict, that conflict is not remedied in this act. It is the intent of the General Assembly to allow persons to seek resolution through judicial process. We, the legislature, is saying we will allow our citizens to seek judicial process, including our military members who feel they may be disenfranchised because we do not meet the 45-day. I think that's a fairly arrogant thing for us to say in legislation. We allow persons to seek resolution through judicial process.
Question is the Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize to the Senate sponsors who wanted me to sit down. But I think it was, I got a little nostalgic this morning with the memorial, because you realize there are, only so many seasons we get to serve together and only so many times we get to debate these issues. And I realized I only get to argue with my friend from Ray one more session. And I want to make sure I don't miss a good chance to do it. It's sort of like you only get to play Phillip Rivers so many times. You got to make sure you win every one of those times. So I do want to make one response to this conversation about day. Because I thought some of the earlier comments were very powerful about the analogies to the Constitution and the analogies to the language that we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And despite the fact that the current practice at the time was that actually that term only referred to land-holding white men and disenfranchised about 80% of the general population, we have come to interpret that term in the more expansive way that Senator Lundberg described, which is actually that it refers to all people, which is why now all men and all women can vote, which is why now people of color can vote, can sit on juries. And so we have chosen the more expansive vision of that term because it matches our current practice and our current values. In the same way that, and the language actually doesn't use the word day, the language in the Constitution says, who shall thereupon order and fix the date for holding the election. If we actually interpreted that to mean the single 24-hour day, in the way that if we actually interpreted we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal meant men, then yes, we would disenfranchise again 80% of the voters in this state. Because in the last election, in the state of Colorado, 80% of the voters voted before that 24-hour day that you call Election Day. If you did that, you would disenfranchise those 80%. You would disenfranchise almost every single member of the armed services who is from Colorado, who is in combat in those 24 hours, and sends a ballot in 10 days, 15 days, 20 days before. The very nature of the way that we read the Constitution and we read these statutes has been to take a more expansive view that allows for current practice. I don't think we want to turn back the clock to a structure that disenfranchises 80% of the voters now any more than we want to turn back the clock to an interpretation of the Constitution that disenfranchises 80% of the voters. And so I think this is a way to align those practices to make sure that actually we keep a Constitution and a statute that enfranchise and empowers voters. I think that's what we've done. I think that's what this bill does. I wouldn't want to see us turn that clock back. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Questions the adoption of Senate Bill 158. Are there any no votes? Senators Lundberg. Roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Majors, would you please poll the senators?
Aguilar. Aguilar, aye. Balmer. Balmer, no. Baumgartner. Baumgartner, no. Brophy. Brophy, no. Cadman. Cadman, no. Crowder. Crowder, no. Grantham. Grantham, no. Guzman. Guzman, aye. Harvey. Harvey, no. Heath. Heath, aye. Herpin. Herpin, no. Hill. Hill, no. Hodge. Hodge, aye. John. John, aye. Johnston. Johnston, aye. Jones. Jones, aye. Kafalis. Kafalis, aye. Kerr. Kerr, aye. King. King, no. Lambert. Lambert, no. Lundberg. Lundberg, no. Marble. Marble, no. Newell. Newell, aye. Nicholson. Nicholson, aye. Renfro. Renfro, no. Rivera. Rivera, no. Roberts. Roberts, no. Scheffel. Scheffel, no. Schwartz. Schwartz, aye. Stedman. Stedman, aye. Toktrop. Toktrop, aye. Todd. Todd, aye. Ulibarri. Ulibarri, aye. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, aye. Madam President.
Aye.
Madam President, aye.
With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 158 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Having voted on the prevailing side, I move for the immediate reconsideration of Senate Bill 158 and ask for a no vote.
The motion before the body is the immediate reconsideration of Senate Bill 158. A roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Majors, would you please poll the senators?
Aguilar. No. Aguilar, no. Balmer. Balmer, aye. Baumgartner. Baumgartner, aye. Brophy. Brophy, aye. Cadman. Cadman. Cadman, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Grantham. Grantham, aye. Guzman. Guzman, no. Harvey. Harvey, aye. Heath. Heath, aye. Herpin. Heath, no. Herpin. Herpin, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Hodge.
Members, if I could ask for it to be quiet, it's hard for us to hear the votes as they're coming in.
Hodge. Hodge, no. John. John, no. Johnston. Johnston, no. Jones. Jones, no. Kafalis. Kafalis, no. Kerr. Kerr, no. King. King, aye. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lundberg. Lundberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Newell. Newell, no. Nicholson. Nicholson, no. Renfro. Renfro, aye. Rivera. Rivera, aye. Roberts. Roberts, aye. Scheffel. Scheffel, aye. Schwartz. Schwartz, no. Stedman. Stedman, no. Toktrop. Toktrop, no. Todd. Todd, no. Ulibarri. Ulibarri, no. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, no. Madam President.
No.
Madam President, no.
With 17 ayes, 18 noes, that motion fails. Co-sponsors on Senate Bill 158. Senators Ulibarri, Mr. Majority Leader. Madam President Pro Tem. Senator Aguilar. Senator Johnston. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1149?
House Bill 1149 by Representative Conte, Senator Marble, concerning making acts related to the advertisement of children for the purposes of transferring their care to others, trafficking in children.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Madam President. I proudly move for the adoption of House Bill 1149 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Question for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1149. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1149 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senators Kafalis, Madam President Pro Tem, Senators Newell, Zenzinger, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Aguilar, Schwartz, Nicholson, Kerr, Todd, John, Roberts, Herpin, Hill, King, Grantham, Rivera, Baumgartner, Lundberg, Johnston, Toktrop, Lambert, Brophy, Shuffle, Jones, Mr. Minority Leader, Senator Renfro. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of House Bill 1100?
House Bill 1100 by Representatives Swalman, Pabon, and Senator Grantham concerning the use of title documents to give notice of characteristics of motor vehicles that affect the vehicle's value and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Madam President. I move House Bill 1100 on third reading and final passage and ask for a use of the current roll call.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of House Bill 1100. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1100 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senators John, Todd, Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Hodge, Senator Crowder, Senators King, Rivera, Nicholson, Jones, Talktrop.
When we can start to dribble it out.
Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 115?
Senate Bill 115 by Senators Robertson, Schwartz, and Representatives Fisher and Quorum concerning procedural requirements applicable to state water plans and in connection therewith making and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Madam President. We move for third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 115 and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of Senate Bill 115. Are there any no votes? Senators Crowder, Baumgartner, Brophy, Balmer, Hill, Marble, Lundberg. With 28 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 115 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Kafalis. Madam President Pro Tem. Senator Todd. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 161?
Senate Bill 161 by Senators Ulibarri and Johnston and Representative Hollinghorst concerning the modernization of provisions of the Uniform Election Code of 1992 that ensure voter access for eligible electors and in connection therewith reducing the deadline by which a voter registration application must be submitted via certain methods, altering procedures pertaining to national change of address searches, allowing emergency ballots to be obtained for non-medical reasons, amending provisions relating to military and overseas voters, increasing the penalty for providing false residential information, making the aiding or abetting the provision of false residential information a new felony offense, and making and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Senate Bill 161 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 161. Are there any no votes? Senators Balmer, Crowder, Marble, Baumgartner, Harvey, Lambert, Brophy, Hill, Shuffle, Lundberg, Mr. Minority Leader, Senator Renfro, Senator Grantham. With 22 ayes, 13 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 161 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Having voted on the prevailing side, I move for the immediate reconsideration of Senate Bill 161 and ask for a no vote.
Question before the body is the immediate reconsideration of Senate Bill 161. All of those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. No. Noes have it. That motion fails. Co-sponsors on Senate Bill 161. Senator Jones. Mr. Majority Leader. Madam President Pro Tem. Senator Schwartz. Senator Aguilar. Senator Stedman. Mr. Majority Leader, we've got you. General orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Guzman. Move for the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into a committee of the whole for purpose of considering general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar, and Senator Guzman will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. The court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to the bills on the general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1195 by Representative Rowe and Senator Lambert concerning the diversion of revenue collected by the Division of Insurance to cash funds.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the adoption of the bill on general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar, which is House Bill 1195, and there are no committee reports.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of the bill on the general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill on the consent calendar is adopted. Majority Leader Heath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move we rise and report.
The motion before the body is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee had one bill under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
March 28, 2014, Madam President, your committee of the whole begs the report is out of consideration of the following attached bill being a second reading thereof, makes following recommendation thereon. House Bill 1195 passed on second reading and ordered revised, placed on the counter for third reading and final passage.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the adoption of the report.
Any discussion? Question before the body is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. House Bill 1195 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Or Madam President, is there anyone who would like to make an announcement?
We're not quite to announcements.
Where are we then? Did I miss something?
Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills.
Thank you, Madam President. I move, let's see, what is it? Yeah. Yeah, is it Senate bill? Thank you again, Madam President. Let me try. I move we lay over Senate Bill 131 until Monday, March 31st.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate Bill 131 will lay over till March 31st. Message from the Governor.
March 27, 2014, to the Honorable Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to inform you that I have approved and filed with the Secretary of State the following acts. Senate Bill 142, concerning an exception for certain water system facilities from the facilities that the Commissioner of Agriculture has the duty to inspect regarding pesticide storage, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:01 p.m. Senate Bill 63, concerning the mandatory review of existing executive branch agency rules conducted by each principal department, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:12 p.m. Senate Bill 60, concerning the authorization of the Department of Transportation to conduct flag person training, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:16 p.m. Senate Bill 9, concerning a disclosure of possible separate ownership of the mineral estate and the sale of real property, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:42 p.m. Senate Bill 106, concerning the appropriation of federal mineral lease monies from the local government permanent fund to the Department of Local Affairs and in connection therewith making an appropriation, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:46 p.m. Senate Bill 95, concerning the ability of a prescription drug outlet to compound drugs for distribution to a Colorado hospital, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:49 p.m. Senate Bill 62, concerning reinstatement of the parent-child legal relationship, approved March 27, 2014 at 12:53 p.m. Senate Bill 137 concerning certification of workers' compensation insurance forms approved March 27, 2014 at 12:56 p.m. Senate Bill 55 concerning more precise specification of the class of vehicles subject to daily vehicle rental fee approved March 27, 2014 at 1:01 p.m. Senate Bill 80 concerning the elimination of a list of certain additional qualifications that apply to property valuation appeal arbitrators approved March 27, 2014 at 1:01 p.m. Senate Bill 120 concerning the continuous appropriation of certain amounts in the state employee workers' compensation account and the risk management fund approved March 27, 2014 at 1:01 p.m. Senate Bill 149 concerning the minimum standards that a private occupational school must satisfy before being issued a certificate of approval to operate in Colorado approved March 27, 2014 at 1:02 p.m. Senate Bill 102 concerning the addition of employment positions held at financial institutions to the circumstances under which an employer may use consumer credit information for employment purposes approved March 27, 2014 at 1:02 p.m. Senate Bill 104 concerning the disposition of disputed payments of tobacco litigation settlement monies received by the state approved March 27, 2014 at 1:02 p.m. Sincerely, John W. Hickenlooper, Governor.
Announcements. Senator Newell.
Thank you, Madam President. I hope you enjoyed your chocolate today, members, from the Colorado Children's Caucus. We are meeting on Monday, but you need to RSVP today, if you can, for your lunch. If you would like lunch. So your flyer looks like this, had a little piece of chocolate on it, and I hope you will be there. It is, I will say, the most popular children's caucus of the year. This is popular every year, it's a panel of youth who are actually in the foster care system, and hope to see you there.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I think one of the pastors reminded us we are 2/3 of the way through the session. This is day 80. With 40 more to go. It was another, I think, good week. And let me again thank you all for your cooperation and helping us make the duties of the Senate go through in, I think, a very remarkable and efficient way. So I appreciate that. And with that, Madam President, I would remind everybody next week is budget week, so we're going to need to be flexible with our schedule. We all know what that is, but probably the most important thing, the one thing that we have to do as members of the General Assembly. So with that, Madam President, I would move the Senate adjourn until 10 a.m. Monday, March 31st.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The Senate will adjourn until 10 a.m. Monday, March 31st.